Long ago, Blurry Creatures started in a basement, and we have progressed to a full set basement. And the cool part about this podcast is you guys out there listening have taken it from just this hobby that we started literally in the basement to a full-on production studio. And the cool part about what we're doing now is having fans in quarterly. We had 25 fans in last week, and we do have a studio audience. No laugh track required. But they did laugh, Luke.
They don't always laugh. It's good to see. It's a good testing ground for our jokes, Nate. But yeah, you actually were in a basement. I was not. But this, and people are always shocked that we're not actually in a basement here, even though it looks that way.
Yeah, exactly. But this is a cool part of what we do with the show. We had Tim Alberino, who's been on the show many times. He came on early in the show, and he came in. We hung out, signed autographs, laughed, asked questions. It was a really good time with you guys and some of the more hardcore fans of the show.
Yeah, and we had to have dinner with a few of the fans as well. So that's something we're going to start doing. If you want to have dinner with us and our guest, if you want to, but everyone gets to come in here, everybody gets to mill around, take photos. We have refreshments. It's a great time. And then with Tim, this time we have a brand new topic. Tim is fresh back from the Peruvian Amazon, where he was out there with Mike Cernovich shooting a documentary, and he is on the trail of a lost city. There's a movie called Lost City of Z. Yeah. Actually follows the intrepid journeys of Percy Fawcett, who was an explorer looking for a lost city, and Tim thinks he may have found it. He's going to share all that with us, along with his hands-on of examining the Nazca mummies, the three-fingered, three-toed mummies of Peru. And
we talked about that, so this is a little more in depth. So there's supposedly a lost city of giants in Peru, so we're gonna get into that one. If you want to get a ticket to our live studio audience, become a member. Members get first try at that. So let's get Tim on this one and enjoy.
The history of our Earth is so different from what we can imagine.
The Smithsonian, if they found out about a large skeleton somewhere, was to go get it.
I'm going to assume at least one person is right, because if one person's right, it busts the paradigm.
It all goes back to the fallen cherub. And the problem with the modern day church, they have a very truncated view of the supernatural.
This backdrop that's just pregnant with all kinds of meaning associated with this Mount Hermon event.
Welcome to Blurry Creatures.
And this guy defects from the kingdom. That's a big deal.
That guy sounds really intelligent.
Yeah. It's a big deal. How you guys doing? Let's go. It's good to be here and in the studio and live, having a good time. How many of you guys were born in the 80s? Look at that.
I guys went to high school in the 80s. There we go. Now we're talking.
Yeah. Anyone own a Trans Am?
How many of you dropped out of high school?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Well, welcome to the
Not
Blurry
the best
Basement.
endorsement. Stay in school, kids. Unless you want to be Timothy Alberino.
Not anymore. I think it's like, we're having a good time. But thanks for coming into the studio, hanging out with us. We spent a long time building this thing. Some people still think it is actually in one of our basements. So
maybe someone said that recently, though. I thought you guys were really in a basement, like at Nate's house.
That's how good it looks.
Nate would like that.
Yeah.
Come down in his underwear.
Yeah.
And record.
It'd be easier. That's for sure. Play some epic games of Crossfire before we interview Tim Alberino. Remember those days?
Right here.
Let's do it.
No, thank you guys for being here. This is the second time, so we're kind of figuring out how to do this whole thing. But it means a lot that you show up. This is support what we're doing, and we're grateful. It was fun to spend some time with you guys. The guys that came to dinner, just hearing about how you engaged the show and found the show, and I think it still blows me away personally. I know Nate feels the same way, that folks listen and show up, and that we get to do this. We get to do this with our friend Timothy Alberino, who graciously is here.
I was here last time too.
Yeah, you were. You were just
somehow
you were lurking in the shadows.
Managed to be in town, but like Luke said, this is how we can put on this, have this studio, and it takes a lot of people to make this show happen now. As the olden days are a little easier, we're actually in the basement, so we kept it real. We kept it in the basement. So I guess welcome back to Blurry Creatures. Tim, I know you've been on the show since the early days. I think episode 19 was our first interview with you, and we didn't know where you were going to take Blurry, but we've done some trips together and
a book.
We're excited for all the future ideas that we have that I know we're gonna roll out more, but
went to Peru.
Yeah,
we made a song too.
We did. Nate and I got horrible diarrhea in Peru together with you, Tim. That was also exciting.
Yeah,
didn't have anything to do with me.
It might have.
Don't
Who
eat
knows?
the
You might have
ceviche
poisoned us. But
I told
Peru.
her. I mean, who eats ceviche up in the Andes Mountains?
Terrible
good
idea
at the time.
I told everybody you only eat raw fish near the ocean.
Yeah,
not at Machu Picchu.
Not the highest point on planet Earth.
It just felt right. Honestly. Yeah. Then it felt wrong. So.
But it's been a long journey. We've done many podcasts together over the years, and obviously we've talked about everything. Any updated thoughts on Bigfoot, Tim?
Updated thoughts on Bigfoot.
We did a deep dive.
We haven't asked you that in several years.
I'm actually tracking with a couple of Bigfoot cases that are very compelling. Like live, ongoing Bigfoot encounters, multiple witnesses.
Really?
Yeah, in 2 different states.
Montana
and West Virginia.
And
I love that you're secretly tracking these.
Well,
maybe not secretly. I haven't heard of it.
I'm very intrigued. Both of the cases, as I said, are the individuals involved are having frequent encounters. One of the cases, the one in Montana, there's 4 witnesses, 4 different witnesses who've seen the creature at different times. Actually, there's 2 on this property.
Wow.
They've got the footprints. They've got
any weird stuff, any woo-woo?
Missing time.
Oh.
Some missing time involved. The other one, there's some pretty interesting photographs associated with it. But in both cases, they have the footprints, photographs of the footprints. That one of them has some hair samples. So I'm going to be following up on those this summer.
That's right.
I love that you're doing that. That's amazing.
So, but my thoughts on Bigfoot I guess they really haven't evolved very much. I read Jeff Meldrum's book, Sasquatch, Where Legend Meets Science.
You like it?
Excellent book. I think he makes a very strong case for a Gigantopithecus type ape.
Remnant ape.
Yeah, remnant ape, bipedal. I tend to think that some of the more metaphysical stuff surrounding the Bigfoot has to do with the Bigfoot's ability to control our perception, manipulate our perception. Sort of like a cloaking device.
He can pause the VCR.
Yeah.
All right.
And change the tape.
Yeah. While we're just standing there.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's my suspicion, and I share that suspicion with some interesting people who I've talked to. One being Eric Bard, who's the chief researcher at Skinwalker Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks that some of these phenomena are able to manipulate our perception.
How do they do that? In theory?
Well, it's like a telepathic control, telepathic communication. They can project things into our minds. They can project thoughts into our minds, imagery into our minds. So that's a very useful mechanism if you want to stay hidden from people so that they don't follow you. Like if it's in this one case, there's this guy saw Bigfoot face to face and it communicated with him telepathically, and then it turned around and started walking away and disappeared, which is common. Seems to be rather common with Bigfoot. And I wonder if, in fact, it didn't disappear, but rather it gave him the perception that it disappeared so that he wouldn't be able to follow it. Because everything else it did was quite physical and mundane. Like it ate a vat of bear fat off of his porch and then left fingerprints and handprints all over the place.
Yeah.
What do you think the why is?
The why of what?
Why manipulate our...
To stay clandestine, to stay concealed. They can control if you can control someone's perception of an event, then you can come and go as you please. I mean, as long as you can engage with that person, make that connection, telepathic connection, or whatever you would call it, and implant a thought or a visualization, then you don't have to be constantly hiding and trying to stay out of the sight of. If you live in proximity, for example, to someone's property, if you're a Bigfoot and you live in proximity to someone's property, you don't have to constantly be evading that person. You just have to continually manipulate their perception, which that sounds crazy, but it's actually, as I said, it's the opinion of myself and a number of notable people that I've interacted with.
That feels very in line with a lot of other conversations we've had about when people see UFOs, they tend to disappear. Is there a similar connection between their abilities and our perceptions? Because it's kind of like the easy button is saying, oh, it's interdimensional, but maybe that's just I think it's happening in our physical world, but because it phases out, we say things like interdimensional because it just phased out of our reality or our perception. We were sweating to the oldies, and nowadays it's a little bit harder. You're a little more busier than you used to be in the 80s. And Luke, how do you get that 1980s body?
Well, I'll tell you what it's not doing. It's not Rocky IV. I'm not lifting logs and doing sit-ups in the barn, although I probably should be. But one of the things that I found that really works is lean. And lean is a doctor-formulated weight loss supplement. They sponsor the show, and they've had remarkable success in weight loss.
That's right. And, a doctor in a university, researcher, they targeted the GLP-1s, which a lot of people see those medications that they're using these days. And you don't have to do that with lean. It naturally lowers your blood sugar, and reduces your appetite and burns fat, and without having to inject your body with anything.
And folks have had amazing results. Losing 20 pounds, struggling to get weight off, and lean has been a lifesaver. Amazing energy boosts and healthy loss in weight, these folks are saying. And if you're struggling to lose weight and a healthy diet and exercise haven't been enough, lean is for you. I know for me, I started taking it when we brought lean on, and I've lost about 11 pounds.
Wow.
I need to add in some gym and nutrition alongside it probably, so I can go from dad bod to rad bod.
Rad bod.
Yeah.
Right back to the 80s. And that's how we do it here on Blurry Creatures. So you can get started with 20% off. Just use the code BLURRY20 at takelean.com. That's code BLURRY20 at takelean.com. Again, that's BLURRY20 at takelean.com.
Results vary. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease, and is not a substitute for care from a healthcare provider.
Yeah, I mean, interdimensional, no one's ever seen an additional dimension. Nobody has any idea what that would look like. I mean, there's theories, but that's one of those words that's used so often. It has the quality of a word that's used so often and so broadly that it doesn't really mean anything specifically. Mm. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like the word supernatural. It's used so broadly that it doesn't actually mean anything. It doesn't have any explanatory power, the word, because it's just used to very liberally to describe any number of occurrences that can't be explained. So I think that in the same way, the word interdimensional, people say, well, Bigfoot is interdimensional or aliens are interdimensional. Well, I suppose that's possible, but the problem is we have no proof that there's another dimension. We really don't. I mean, we know we can directly perceive the three spatial dimensions and the fourth of time. We can theorize that there's other dimensions, and we wouldn't even know what that looks like, what interaction between dimensions would look like, what it would really look like to go from one of these theoretical dimensions to another. So I'm just much more cautious with that terminology.
If you had to guess, why would Bigfoot want to stay hidden other than like sort of the natural answer? He's an animal, or she is an animal. Patty's a she.
That's the real mystery. I mean, well, other animals stay hidden. I mean, there's a lot of creatures that.
Yeah, but they use what we maybe call more conventional, like things like they camouflage. They do really, snow leopards and chameleons, but this seems a little different.
Yeah, because animals, they stay hidden because it's instinctual. They perceive that there's a danger, that we pose some kind of a danger, so they stay hidden. But these creatures, the Sasquatch seems to be much more intelligent than any animal that we know of.
Yeah.
And so their reasons for staying hidden might be more interesting.
Yeah.
I think they are.
Yeah, it's not.
This is not a Bigfoot episode, everyone, either. This is just.
I don't think they.
I just like I like picking your brain on this because I think it's.
Yeah, I'm constantly actually studying Bigfoot stuff.
I know you are. The last year we've been talking about this, like just sort of. You've been like, I'm into this. I'm kind of looking around and talking to Melba Ketchum.
Yeah.
We'll leave that there.
Sometimes we get a little off-air banter going.
Yeah, no, I've interfaced with a lot of people in the Bigfoot space.
Yeah.
I'm going to have David Politis with me in Montana soon. And David is, one of the things he's going to talk about is Sasquatch.
Well, the beautiful part about Blurry is you get a little ADD for a topic, you can move on to another one. And I'm sure it's like hard to just stay in one rabbit hole all the time. And sometimes Bigfoot talking about someone who has an experience is fun.
You know, I was on the Sean Ryan show a couple of days ago, and
let's go.
They asked me, they do a pre-show for their members community, and it's one of Sean's producers. And they have a series of questions, and he asked me a really, really good question. It caught me off guard. He said, "What if you could know the answer to any conspiratorial thing? What would it be? One conspiracy that you would love to get clarity on, definitive proof or answers about." I just sit there for a long time because that's a really good question, because there's so many things that, but so many of the conspiracies things that people would label as conspiracies, I'm already totally persuaded that they're true. I don't really need any more evidence of gray aliens. I'm 100% confident that gray aliens exist. I don't need evidence of giants to convince me that they exist. I'm already thoroughly persuaded that giants exist. So it was hard. I was sitting there for a minute, and I thought, Bigfoot.
Yeah.
That's the one. It really is. That's the one.
You get the Sasquatch Award, Tim.
Yeah. All right, we got one? Yes. It worked. That was
there he is.
The first and only Sasquatch
he's
Award.
A plant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You get to have the flare on your desk for the rest of the episode.
I'm taking that home.
Oh, you can. You could do that.
We'll have to have another.
We'll get it back.
But I think with all these things, that the reason we started with Bigfoot on the show is because there's a lot of data and there's a lot of sightings, and it's not just we're just sitting in the conspiracy space. There's actually raw data, and I think that a lot of what you do is you have these conversations that sort of no one else really likes to have, but you try to go for the data. You try to actually get to the places, and you've been to Peru recently, and you're trying to just rediscover some of these places that have been lost. We went to Peru with you, obviously, and looked at some of the megaliths, and they're incredible. I mean, when you get there and you see them, you understand. So you've actually gone out. You don't just have weird conversations. You want to see it for yourself. So if someone emails you and says, I have this thing happening on my property, you're going to want to go. And I like the data. I think that's a big part of what we do on our show. So
yeah, I like to refer to myself as an investigative researcher, because I do like to go out and actually explore and investigate situations on the ground.
Like a modern day Indiana Jones.
No, I don't think so. I like to think of myself as Crocodile Dundee.
You call that a knife? This is a knife.
Yeah.
You ever see the movie The Ghost in the Darkness?
Yes, dude. That.
Honestly,
I'll be
terrifying. So when I was a kid,
I
went through as all kids do. I went through an Indiana Jones phase, and in fact, I was teaching myself.
Did you ever get out of that phase?
I think I have. Have I?
I feel like you have to put a chaw of Big League Chew in your mouth when you say that, though.
I went through the Indiana Jones phase where I was teaching myself hieroglyphics, and I was writing my name in school in hieroglyphics. I wanted to be an archaeologist for a while until I realized how boring that job is. Sorry for those of you who are... Well, no, actually, I talked to an archaeologist today there's
one out here
doing diving and stuff. Yeah, that's awesome. But a lot of the archaeologists that I deal with in Peru and stuff, they really don't like their job very much because they're on boring assignments. So I guess it depends on what you're looking for as an archaeologist. But I wanted to be Indiana Jones for a period of time, and then Crocodile Dundee, and then as I got older,
Borat.
Yes. Okay. That's where I landed.
Nice.
Then as I got older, I remember watching the movie The Ghost in the Darkness.
Dude, yes.
Okay.
With my dad, and I forget when that came out, like 1990 something.
Yeah, but
Six,
it was,
maybe.
Dude, that movie's terrifying.
I forget how old I was probably.
It's a true story.
Early teens.
Yeah.
And then that movie probably impacted me more than any other. I wanted to be like an explorer at that point.
Eaten by lions, by rogue lions.
Sure. Sasquatch, eaten by a Sasquatch.
Yeah.
I think we need more data in this space, though, because a lot of these topics stay controversial, even big names. I know sometimes you go on podcasts and they're like, I don't know about that. But I think that some of the things that are happening in these paranormal spaces are nefarious and are evil, and you need somebody to kind of help blow the whistle and get people, okay, what's going on here? What are these things doing? And I think for me, that was the catalyst to start thinking there could be a podcast around sort of the paranormal Bigfoot stuff, and there's like this theological thread. So without like work like David Paulides' stuff, I don't think Blurry would have become a podcast, because it felt like this isn't just fun sitting around the water cooler talking about alien stories. You want to know, you want to talk to people, and people probably email you all the time saying, I'm an abductee, I've been messed with this stuff.
Yes.
I've seen these things.
Yeah.
And it's like you're like
it's interesting because
trying to help people.
I'm not really pigeonholed into any one topic. I've have broad interests, and so in one day I'll get people emailing me about abduction related content, people emailing me about Bigfoot, people emailing me pictures of orbs or whatever. Yeah. Stuff related to demon possession. I kind of get the whole gamut in my giants in my inbox. Yeah. And I'm constantly finding myself always juggling these different topics and switching back and forth. Like I was just in D.C. recently with Congressman Eric Burleson, and we were talking about UAP related stuff, and that was really cool. I brought my son Blaze with me, my 15-year-old son Blaze, and it's just interesting standing there. Me as a high school dropout, mind you, standing there with congressmen talking about UAPs in the Congress building, in the Capitol building, and it's just kind of surreal. And then last month I was in Peru, as you mentioned. I was in Peru last month, investigating megaliths. Yeah, new megaliths, and also the tridactyl, the three-fingered
mummies,
Nazca beings. They call them the tridactyl beings of Nazca, or the Nazca tridactyl.
But this is like stones you can touch. This is like petrified skeletons you can look at. It's like data. It's not just sitting around speculating. You like to see the stuff,
right? So, because I was actually, I guess we just dive into that. I was actually invited to go down to Peru by Dr. Roger Zuniga, who is a professor, I believe of anthropology in Peru, but he's the head of the project studying the tridactyl Nazca beings, the Nazca tridactyl beings. And I should back up. He works for the University of Ica. University Ica is in the desert of Peru, and these tridactyl mummies were discovered. I call them mummies. Let me say this right up front. They're not actually mummies. I don't know if you guys have seen these things, the three-fingered alien mummies from Peru. They've been around for about 10 years. They've recently garnered a lot more attention. There they are on the screen there. Those are the small ones.
Yeah, we had Josh on.
Those are the small ones. I don't know if you guys have a picture of the larger ones. Type in Maria Nazca. There she is, up there right on the top. Yeah, that's Maria. So these things have been around for about 10 years, and again, I was invited by the professor who's overseeing them. They have 4 of these specimens at the University of Ica. Professor Zuniga is in charge of the project. He's heading the project to study them there. And so that's one of the things I wanted to do while I was in Peru, was go down there and visit Professor Zuniga, go to the University of Ica, and look at these mummies. I I was going to say that they're not actually mummies. They're technically called they're desiccated corpses, and they're not mummified. They're not wrapped in anything. But you can see that they're covered in a white powdery substance. That's fossilized algae, and they apply that. This is a process of desiccation that they use in Peru. They apply that to the skin after the individual dies, and it sucks out all of the moisture, and they get preserved this way. And these mummies were discovered north of the city of Nazca, in the general vicinity of the Nazca lines. And this is a very, very dry area of Peru. In fact, it's one of the driest places on planet Earth. So you have extremely well preserved.
Were these like in caves?
I'm not going to go through the whole story here because I know we want to talk about the lost city of Z, but it's a long and convoluted story. The mummies allegedly were found in caves. I know that's not true. That's a cover story. I'm friends with the individual who's at the beginning of the story. The story actually begins with him. His name is Thierry Jamin, and he's a French explorer, researcher and explorer who lives in Peru. He lives in Cusco, and he has an organization called the Incari Institute, based in Cusco. And Thierry Jamin is a serious explorer. His objective is he wants to discover Paititi, which is a legendary lost city of the Inca. And this has been his mission for years. And he's in his pursuit of Paititi, he's made some critical discoveries. He's discovered some very interesting things, including at Machu Picchu. So in 2015, I'll summarize very, very briefly here. As I said, it's a very convoluted saga. It's going to be difficult to summarize, but I'll give it the old college try. In 2015, mummies were discovered by some of them. The initial ones were discovered by a group of huaqueros. Huaqueros are grave robbers in Peru, in the general vicinity of the Nazca lines. This group contacted Thierry and the Incari Institute. Thierry was able to analyze some of these mummies, and I should describe what they're like. Some of them are the initial ones that were discovered are small, about 2 feet tall, thereabouts. There's a bunch of different mummies. Okay, so you have small ones that they call these the reptilians or the reptids or something like that, and they think that they're reptilian because they have scales. You can see their skin is preserved. And it appears to be scales, like on a snake, or a reptile or lizard. That's a larger one, but the smaller ones, also some of them have eggs, apparently, and they're all tridactyl. They all have 3 fingers. Okay, so this one is called Maria, and they call her Maria/Mario now because originally they thought it was a female, and now they're not sure. So.
Sign of the times.
So, this specimen is obviously it's tridactyl, 3 fingers, 3 toes, and you can't see it from this angle, but she has an elongated skull.
Yeah,
and the orbital sockets are obviously very large, and she's got a very small nose, but she has puckered lips. That's interesting, and I'll tell you why in a minute.
Lip filler?
Yeah, pucker. Yep, that's Botox.
All
that's
right.
proof of ancient Botox.
Ancient Botox.
So, there's other anomalies, anatomical anomalies, but understand that there's about 15 mummies that are publicly known right now. 15, and some of them are small, some of them are large, like Maria, and the way that the Incari Institute classifies these mummies, because most of them have gone through the Incari Institute, have come to the Incari Institute. The Incari Institute donated 4 of them to the University of Ica. That's where Maria is currently. That's where I saw this. We're going to call them mummies for the sake of not having to say desiccated bodies 1,000 times or desiccated corpses. That's where I saw Maria, was at the University of Ica. and they have some smaller specimens there too. But the Ankara Institute has classified 3 kinds of mummies: the reptilians, then they have one that they call the insectoids, because it seems to have like wings, and then they have what they call the hybrids, and these ones they would classify as the hybrids. So what they think, this is all very complex. It's very difficult to truncate all of this information. What they think is that the small ones were hybridized with human beings. There's a picture of the small one. Small ones are hybridized with human beings, and it produced the larger ones, like Maria. Now, I don't think that myself. I'm not persuaded that that's true. So,
looks very familiar.
Steven Spielberg.
You know what else turned white when he got sick?
Well, no, it's even more familiar than that. Remember the movie? What was the movie where they?
E.T.
No. There's another one by Spielberg.
Oh.
Does anyone know what it was called? What?
Close Encounters?
I think, and they look just like that, right? So, I'll cut to the chase here because this is going to take forever to get through. I don't think that the small ones were ever living, breathing creatures. I think those might be ancient artifacts, maybe. They could be hoaxes, but if they're real, in the sense that, and they are biological, by the way, there's been testing done on these things, extensive tests, scientific tests, including by teams from the United States. Very prestigious scientists have been involved in this. I think you guys interviewed Josh McDowell, his father. John McDowell is an award-winning forensic scientist.
Yeah.
Award-winning. I don't think there's a better forensic scientist out there than John McDowell.
Yeah.
And he's been...
Yeah, he showed us like the fingerprints on these things.
These things have fingerprints that go horizontally. So there's all kinds of things, but I got to complete my thought here. So there's so much information.
Helping.
There's so much information about these things that I just want to go all over the place. But what I want to say is I think that the little ones are, at best case scenario, are effigies or dolls made as facsimiles of the larger ones. In other words, they were found in the tombs. Maybe they had ritualistic purposes with the larger ones and were created as facsimiles. I don't personally believe the little ones were ever alive. And it was interesting when I came home. I formulated that opinion in Peru looking at them. And when I came home, I was kind of delighted to find that Dr. John McDowell actually came to the same conclusion. Him and his team never investigated the small ones. They only had access to the large ones. And he said in an interview he was not really interested in the small ones because just the cursory observation of their skeletal structure is enough to conclude that it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have worked. Like they could not have been functional living beings based just on their skeletal structure. Whereas the large ones are very compelling. Okay, so one thing I can tell you guys for sure about these things, and I'm sure Josh probably told you guys this as well. There's nothing fake in these mummies. There's no plastic. There's no epoxy. There's no glue. There's no metal wire. Nothing is stapled or fastened together in an artificial way. 100% biological material. That is known without question. That is not in doubt. 100% biological material to all of them, the little ones and the large ones. So everyone who's analyzed these things, and we're talking, there's been American teams, Mexican teams, Japanese teams of scientists, they have all concluded conclusively, and this is what they're willing to say officially, they have not discovered any evidence of a hoax. And that's the first thing. And the second thing, all of the material is biological. Okay. So CT scans have been done, X-rays have been done, dissections have been done. Genetic analyses on various species have been done. The genetic analysis, generally speaking, for these mummies, 30% human DNA, 30% human, 70% anomalous. Oh, man. But there's also, and this is getting back to the puckered lips of Maria right there, they've also discovered chimpanzee and bonobo DNA. So if this is a hoax, Why would they? How in the world would they get their hands on chimpanzee and bonobo DNA in Peru? There are no chimpanzees
how old do you think
and bonobos.
these things are?
That's a good point. They've also been subjected to carbon dating. They are between approximately 1,000 to 1,500 years old, somewhere in there.
Not that old.
So, what we can say definitively about these is that all biological material, nothing fake, no glue, no epoxy. The skeletal structure of the large ones it gives you the impression when you're standing next to it, like I was, that this thing was alive. The skeletal structure of the small ones, not so much. The opposite, in fact. There's no way this thing was alive. That was my impression. So
don't discount the little people.
I am discounting the little people.
Oh, man.
So I think that the little ones are actually probably composites of different animals. That's my own opinion. I don't know if any of the scientists have concluded that. You can see in this picture of the little one here on the chest, there's a metal implant. And that the metal on the chest, and on some of the larger mummies, there's one particular one has an implant in the forehead. And I'll spend just a couple more minutes here, and then we'll move on, because you guys already talked about this on your show. The implant there on the chest. There's a couple things about these implants that Dr. Roger Zuniga wanted really to emphasize to me. Number one, the bone and the flesh apparently have grown over the implant. In all of the cases of implants. There's sinew, there's tissue that's grown over the implant. Well, the only way that happens is if whenever that implant was implanted, something was alive.
It was alive, yeah.
Now, whether that means that the tissue was alive and it was a different animal and then they dissected it or whatever, but it just means that the tissue was alive when the implant was implanted. And then the second thing is that some of these metal implants, they have gold, silver, platinum, different metals, and they have osmium. Osmium is a very rare metal, and it doesn't have any use. It's a relatively new discovery. Osmium only goes back to like the late 1800s. And it's only used it only has one use ever. It's only ever had one use, even today. It's the only application of osmium is in communication devices. Well, that's weird.
That's weird.
So that's weird. So there's obviously a lot of mystery here. You can see the implant in the hand there too. And there were large hands discovered, like really big ones that would have belonged to 9 foot tall, 10 foot tall aliens, or whatever these are.
Yeah.
And I was told that one of them had been proven to be a hoax, probably because it contained kind of epoxy or something. So this is a big mystery. It's super controversial. Like on if you engage with people on X or on social media about these mummies, you're going to get people who are diehard believers in them, and then you're going to get people who are convinced they're hoaxes. And I'm somewhere in the middle. I do believe that the larger ones, I am more persuaded than not, let's put it in these terms, that the larger ones were living, breathing creatures.
Hybrids?
Very possibly hybrids of some kind. And I'm going to say this one last thing. 2 of the larger mummies, including one of them is called Montserrat, have fetuses.
Yeah.
Okay, Montserrat is pregnant. She's covering her womb. And I believe one of the Mexican doctors who was on a team analyzing that particular specimen noticed that the hands are covering the womb and suspected that she might be pregnant. And so they did the CT scan, and sure enough, pregnant. The fetus looks just like them. Elongated skull, large eyes, 3 fingers. Okay, so if these are hoaxes, these are the most intricate, sophisticated hoaxes ever perpetrated in the history of archaeology.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. I have been told that some of the professors at the University of Ica told me, now I haven't been able to confirm this, that there are like hundreds of these things. Not just the 15 that are known or 16 that are known. Yeah. There's actually like 150. That's what they told me. And I couldn't believe it. I'm still not sure I do. But
Well, Josh told us, I remember in our interview, that there are probably an untold amount also in private collections that they really can't account for.
That's the problem, is they've been in the black market.
Yeah.
And they've been, Maria, I heard, rumor is that Maria was on the black market for $1 million. So you have that's a problem, because somebody has a obviously financial incentive here.
Right.
Big time. I mean, if you're a Waquedo living in Peru, you can make $1 million making a fake mummy. You'll spend day and night for 10 years to make that mummy if it means you're going to get $1 million at the end of the day. No matter how difficult you'll figure out how to do it in as convincing way as possible. So
the fetus is interesting too, Tim, because then you're not looking at body modification either, right? You're having in theory you're having a natural species.
Yeah. But you're talking about a third world country. How can you? It's not easy to pull off a hoax like that.
It's not easy, although they do it all the time in Mexico and Peru. They hoax artifacts, and usually it has to do with aliens because of Ancient Aliens. Ancient Aliens, the TV show, is the motivating factor here. It's created a market for this kind of artifacts. So you have to be really cautious. That's why
there's always like a explanation story of how anything's hoaxed. Even the Patterson-Gimlin footage. Oh, there's a guy in a suit, right? But then you compare the two, and they don't. Do you think there's some sort of like trying to red herring stuff, trying to get people off the trail?
Yes, that's a good point. And I said that I would wrap this up a long time ago.
Yeah,
I've heard this before.
We're 38 minutes.
I got a good transition.
No, this is a good point though. Because there's so much data here. I mean, I've gone through the whole, and I'm making a video on my YouTube channel going through the whole timeline of this thing. There's just so much data about these things. The Ministry of Culture has tried to take the specimens that are in the University of Ica, forced entry, tried to seize them by force 6 times.
Yeah.
6 times. In 2023, when they made their last attempt, a couple of these things showed up at an airport. And they were, diminutive figures. They looked like the little ones. And they were dressed in traditional Andean garb, right? So they looked like dolls. The Ministry of Culture confiscated them, dissected them, and was very excited because it could finally go out to the public and say, we now have proof that these alien mummies are fake. Because the bones were held together by epoxy, by glue. Because there was, metal and plastic or whatever. There was non-biological material inside. And the whole world got the memo. This was a big news at the time in 2023. Peruvian Nazca mummies, or Peruvian alien mummies, proven to be a fraud based on the ones that were confiscated in the airport. But what these news organizations didn't report is that the individual who was attempting to send via DHL the mummies to, I believe, to Mexico, admitted immediately that these were facsimiles, that these were just copies of the ones that had become famous, and he was just selling models. So I think, personally, it's very possible that the Ministry of Culture orchestrated that whole thing to try and dispel the interest in these mummies, to try and quell the interest in these mummies. But certainly those mummies, because if you go type this in on Google right now, that's what you're going to get. Alien mummies proven fake, Peru alien mummies proved to be fraud or whatever, because of that incident.
Yeah.
But the guy who made the mummies already confessed that.
And that story always sticks way harder.
That's right.
Than the one that's like, these are real. And I guess my transition question from all this is, why Peru? Why is it always like in that part of the world?
I thought you were going to have a better one. Like, be like, so if we go from Maria to Mario, let's transition to this other thing in Peru.
That would have been a good one.
Yeah.
That doesn't really do well on YouTube. YouTube flags that video really quickly. But, we went there, and you're going down there looking for megaliths. I mean, it seems all connected, right? Like, there's just a bunch of bizarre stuff in that part of the world.
Peru's the most mysterious place on planet Earth. I'm convinced of it. I mean, that's why I'm always there. There's always something new to investigate. And I don't know why. It just is. And every time I go back down there, there's some new weird thing going on. And I'm being contacted by somebody to come look at something. And it's I don't know why that is. Because it's not Ecuador, and it's not Bolivia,
right.
And it's not Brazil, although Brazil has a lot of interesting things. It's always Peru. And I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah. But you just went there, and did you guys discover some stuff? I mean...
So when we were in Peru, so that was part of the objective, was to go down, meet with Dr. Roger Zuniga, look at those specimens. And I've only just scratched the surface on these things. I mean, I'm making a video on my YouTube channel about it. But the other thing that we did, I already published a video about this on my YouTube channel. We went and looked at this megalithic site called Gobekli, which came to my attention through Wandering Wolf Productions, through Mike from Wandering Wolf Productions. And it seemed that there were new megalithic stones had been discovered in Peru, perhaps part of a quarry, and they looked really compelling. And the footage that Mike featured on his channel, and then also the original guy who went up there was a Peruvian. He has a YouTube channel called Descubriendo Lugares Impresionantes, and his channel, he went up there a couple of times. And when he went up there, there was a handful of stones that were uncovered because they were in the jungle. And then when Mike went up there, there was a couple more. And then when I went up there, they had cleared out a whole big area. And there were even more. So I decided to go investigate, and I wanted to see this site for myself because this is a big claim. I mean, these stones would rival some of the stones at Baalbek if they were actually megaliths.
Like in size?
In size.
Okay.
Are they fit together more rectangle or round?
They're not fitted stones. Maybe they were being quarried and they're just sitting there. There's no stones fitted together or anything, but they're rectangular. And I went, and actually Mike Cernovich went with me, and that was we had a film crew with us for a documentary they were filming. And Gobekli is located it's a rather remote village in Peru. It's in an area of Peru known as the Andean Amazon. The Andean Amazon is where the Andes Mountains meet the Amazon rainforest. This is a very mysterious part of Peru. This is the northern Andean Amazon. There's a lot of this area that's totally uncharted, unexplored. It hasn't got the kind of attention that Machu Picchu and those kind of areas have gotten. And I lived in this part of Peru. This is specifically where I lived for a long time. Been all over Peru, but I lived in the Andean Amazon, northern Peru.
Dreadlock Tim.
Huh?
Dreadlock Tim lived there.
Dreadlock Tim.
Did you know then that this place was weird? Did you know
I figured it out, yeah. So I lived in Terrapota, Moyobamba, then in the lower jungle, Yurimaguas and Iquitos. That area, those 4 cities that I just named, is where I spent a lot of my time. And this site is outside of Moyobamba. And that's the Andes Mountains. It's like the foothills of the Andes there. I say foothills, but those are probably 10,000, 10,000 foot tall mountains there. But it's still jungle. And they call it the high jungle in Peru. And I've always wondered if there were megaliths in the high jungle, but I've never seen evidence of megaliths in the high jungle. So when I saw Gobekli, when I saw the images of Gobekli, I was intrigued. I wanted to go see this. I have contacts. I have a lot of acquaintances and friends especially in this part of Peru. So I made contact with the village, and then we eventually made our way up to the village. The only way to get to that village, by the way, is to hike. There's no roads that go to it. There's an ancient path, and this is kind of important to the story here. I realized when I was walking on this path to get there, you have to hike 40 minutes up the mountain, that this was either see, there it is there. That road was either made by the Inca or a pre-Inca civilization. That's not just some random path in the woods. And the villagers did make it. I confirmed that with them. And it doesn't look very impressive now because it hasn't been well maintained. But I've been on Inca roads. That's what they look like. And when you find an ancient road like this in Peru, it always leads to somewhere important. Always. They don't build these. They didn't take the time and energy to make roads like this without connecting important locations with them. So you can see there's a good example of this.
And the second half of our trip, when we went to Peru, obviously Machu Picchu is in a weird location. And then that one place we stopped and hiked up the side of the mountain into that cave.
The portal cave.
Yeah.
I was looking at the picture the other day. You and I stand in front of the portal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's strange locations. It doesn't make sense to build.
Alta Iglesia. That road goes right by Capuli. So there's the village of Capuli. And
there's a video playing for those listening.
Yeah. So this is on my YouTube channel. People can see this video. And this is where those megalithic stones are. So, long story short, I looked at the stones. I spent a long time surveying this site, and you'll see some aerial footage of it. At first glance, the stones appear to be very rectangular, but as you can see here, on closer inspection, they're really not. And one thing that was never, they're not really very straight, is what I'm trying to say. They are rectangular, generally speaking, the shape, but they're not, you can see, they're not like precisely cut. There's no evidence of any cutting on these stones either. And also, if you look at the stones, there are some very interesting right angles. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the stones, if you stand on the stones and you look at them from above, you'll see that the fracturing there's this vertical fracturing in the stone. It goes almost all the way through the stone. And that's the way the stones are breaking. And you can actually see the pieces that have broken off. And so I think they're just, long story short, this isn't that interesting to me anymore, this site, because it's inconclusive. You can say that somebody was there with crowbars or whatever, breaking off the pieces of the stone, just taking advantage of these natural fractures in the stone, and maybe harvesting them for some kind of a megalithic edifice. Problem is, we have to find that edifice. If we find a megalithic complex incorporating these stones, then we know they're megaliths. But until we do, I think it's just as likely that they're natural. That's not where the story ends. So
I was going to ask you about this because the Montana megaliths, this is another site close to you where you live, where it feels like when we've talked before, we haven't done an episode on this, but you guys familiar with that at all? There's this place in Montana where there's this wall that a lot of people think could be megalithic, and Tim is actually someone who has been granted sort of exclusive access to go there. And so I was actually going to bring this up, but you kind of answered this thing that sometimes in nature it looks that way. You have things that can break in ways that feel like it will mimic in some ways
most
construction.
Of the time.
Yes.
Yeah, most of the time when you find something interesting like this, it's probably natural. It's the exception to the rule when you find something that's not natural, that's cut. And in regard to Sage Wall, I don't have an exclusive at Sage Wall, but I could have.
Well, you were offered that.
I was offered, and I said no. And so the reason why I'm highlighting this is because I had a really good financial incentive to say that Sage Wall was a legitimate megalith.
Right.
More than anyone.
Right, because you could have been like, "Hey, it's real. Let's take tours." I got
exactly.
the only bus going up there.
I would have had the exclusive on the visits to Sage Wall.
Right.
But I'm not convinced that it's artificial. I think that it's most likely. I'm open to evidence emerging to change my mind. But I think, in my opinion, I've been up there a few times. It's most likely natural. I'm going up again, by the way. We're doing a VIP trip for my conference in June, and I'm taking 50 people to Sage Wall, and it's a beautiful site. It's really an amazing geological feature, but the blocks don't go all the way through the wall. Well, I mean, what are we looking at here? If the blocks don't go all the way through the wall, then they're not blocks.
Right.
It's fissuring, right?
Yeah.
So unless somebody finds some really compelling evidence that Sage Wall is is artificial.
So for the common man, it's like wrinkles versus
that's right
scales.
That's right. Yep. So, and I get a lot of hate online because
people want it to be weird.
I sold out.
Yeah.
Who I sold out to and how much money I was supposed to get, I haven't figured out yet. But I sold out.
But you can get a VIP
We're
ticket
get a cut of
pass
that.
now to the tour.
Well, I mean, so
$7.99.
Well, back to Peru then. Like, there's a road.
Yeah.
So Kapuli, that's Kapuli. Kapuli maybe could be a megalithic quarry. Okay, maybe. So that was my thought.
Or could it be a blast site for something that got blown apart?
No,
you talk about ruin and cataclysm.
No, it looks like
What?
it looks like the side of the mountain.
It was blasted.
Oh, so this is Tim's theory. You said that like a lot of these dynasties, empires got hit by massive cataclysm.
Oh, okay.
Asteroids,
I mean,
like
could
something
be.
hit it and blew it up.
It could be, but
So
if
you
you
see,
look at the side of the mountain, if you look at the side of the mountain, you'll see that this rock face is jutting out, and large rectangular pieces snapped off the side of it. Okay.
Yeah.
However, this, and I know that the listeners can't see what we're looking at, but we are looking at now a very, very intriguing cascade. This is in the vicinity of Kapuli. This is about once you hike back down to the other village that you can get to by a road, which is a 40-minute hike down, and then this is 10 minutes down the road. So it's in the vicinity of Kapuli. And this is a tourist destination for the locals. But gringos don't really go here because this is not a touristy part of Peru. This is the closest village is the village of Nueva Cajamarca. And nobody goes to Nueva Cajamarca. So this is called La Colca Cascade. And it's a very intriguing waterfall. I call it a cascade because the water really isn't falling for most of it. It's sort of just sliding, cascading down the rock face. But look at the rock face.
Yeah, it looks like a bottom of a pyramid or something.
So that is,
With
those
the kid,
are not
with the
cut
kids
stones.
sliding down it.
Yeah, these are not cut stones. That may be right there. But these are not cut stones. This is even more impressive to some extent. This is the bedrock, because you can see the bedrock of this mountain if you go up into the jungle and you start clearing the jungle away. The bedrock is like, I'm not sure what kind of stone this is. It could be some kind of a slate. So it's layered. It's like sheets of stone, naturally, the bedrock, you can see they're layered on top of each other, right? So I am persuaded that La Colca Cascade is an aqueduct. That's an aqueduct that somebody made. Now, they didn't make it by adding blocks and creating this.
It's not like, yeah.
No, in fact, quite the opposite. It appears to me that they removed layers of that stone, because if you look to the left and to the right, you'll see the same stone but layered up higher. It appears to me that somebody removed layers of the stone to create an aqueduct, to channel the water. And then they created the pools to control the flow of the water, and then they put like these keys, which we were shown earlier, they're these stones where you could fill the pools up and drain them. Well, that's very interesting, because that's that right there is the signature of civilization.
Yeah.
So you have this road, you have this very important road, clearly a very important road, either made by the Inca or the Chachapoyas, and we'll talk about them in a couple minutes. The Inca or the Chachapoyas, likely the Chachapoyas, and then you have this Colca Cascade, which I believe is an aqueduct. See the pool? There's two pools like that.
Yeah.
And again, to the left and to the right is the same bedrock, but higher up. So it looks like somebody removed layers. And you can kind of see where I'm standing right in front of me, how there's you can see how you can remove layers of the bedrock.
Yeah.
You can peel away layers of this bedrock.
So are you saying there's clues that you can keep going down, you're going to find something nearby?
I'm getting there.
Oh, right.
So whereas Kapuli was relatively unimpressive,
yeah,
because it was inconclusive.
Yeah.
Right here, I'm starting to think, okay, wait a minute. wait a minute. This is interesting. I see the fingerprint of civilization here. I see an aqueduct. So this got me thinking. The road and an aqueduct, okay? If you have a road and you have an aqueduct, then you have a city somewhere out here. You have a city. So this is in my head. A lost city, an ancient city. While I was returning back to while we were on our way back to actually when we got back to Moyobamba, we were staying in Moyobamba, which is the provincial capital of this part of Peru. My Peruvian friend had sent me a picture of a discovery that was made previous to our arrival, just about a week before we got there. And it was a discovery made by a professor who teaches at the University of San Martin and in Moyobamba. And he discovered what appeared to be a cyclopean megalithic wall in that area. And when I saw that photo, not that one, that's me. When I saw that photo, I was very intrigued. At first, I wasn't that interested. And you can go back, you can pause the video there with the professor. At first, when I was told about these ruins, said, hey, some ruins were discovered a week ago, it didn't really register with me because ruins are discovered all the time in Peru. And they're usually not that remarkable. When I saw the photo, I became very interested because I saw cyclopean megalithic walls, which I've never seen in this part of Peru. So I wanted to meet with the professor. I met with him. There he is the next day. I met with the professor. He happened to be up in Moyobamba. And he told me something really interesting. How much more time do we have? Because
An hour.
Okay. He told me something really interesting. He is heading up a project there in this part of Peru with some other professors, some other professionals from the university, from various fields, archaeologists and so forth. And initially, their project was focused on finding the original establishment, the original colony. What am I trying to say here? The ruins marking the original location, that's how I should say it, of the city of Moyobamba, because the city of Moyobamba is not in we know it's not in the original place. The conquistadors came there and they established an outpost. That's where the original location of Moyobamba was. And they were trying to find this location. That's their project. But as they're out there in the high jungle looking for this location, they start to find other stuff. Namely, they've identified a corridor between the city of Chachapoyas, Moyobamba, and the lost city of Gran Pahaten. And Gran Pahaten, there's a map there, guys, that for the audience here, you can see where these three cities are located. Gran Pahaten, there it is. And I zoom in on it if you move forward. There we go. So Gran Pahaten, you see it in the southern portion of the map. That is a lost city that was discovered about sometime, I would say, in the 60s, 70s, or 80s. I don't remember. Somewhere in that window of time. It is a remarkable lost city. Like, it looks like something straight out of Indiana Jones. We know that Gran Pahaten was built by the Chachapoyas people. And Gran Pahaten is unique. It's interesting in that you are not allowed to go there without explicit permission from the Ministry of Culture. Not allowed to go there. That area is off limits to Peruvians and to tourists. You can't go there. You have to get the explicit permission from the Ministry of Culture. I know, I tried. So,
why?
Because the city was built by the Chachapoyas people. Now, there's something about the Chachapoyas and the Chachapoyas people in Peru, quite the opposite. There's something about the Chachapoyas people in Peru that separates them from all the other indigenous tribes.
Huh.
This is not as true today as it was 20 years ago, 50 years ago, and certainly 100 and 200 years ago. But Chachapoyas people have these genetic anomalies. They have fair skin, they're unusually tall, and they have red and blonde hair and clear eyes. And according to legend,
and full hearts.
And according to legend, and some of them will tell you this, they were descended from the red-haired giants who inhabited the cloud forest, Peru. Chachapoyas is in the cloud forest. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever heard me tell my story about the cloud forest, where I heard that voice boom my name. I think I've told you that story.
Yeah.
Okay. That happened on the other side, too. That Chachapoyas, that marker up there on the upper left-hand, to the left of Chachapoyas, that tract of land is uncharted cloud forest. There's no roads that go through it. I was on the other side in a town called Okayi. And in Okayi, this is where they were telling me about the cows being up in the trees. That farmers would mysteriously find their cows up in the trees. And the villagers were telling me about the red-haired giants that lived in the cloud forest. And they believed that the giants were putting the cows up in the trees. And in fact, the priest told me that. And then I have a whole nother, that story would take the rest of this time to tell, but let's just say, if you haven't heard it, you should go find it. But that's the region of the cloud forest. And so there's legends in Peru that tell of the red-haired giants that used to inhabit the cloud forest.
Do you think that lost city is the lost city of Z?
Yes. That's where we're going.
Percy Fawcett.
That's where we're going. So you had to pull the punchline already there.
Oh, man. He's always reading ahead.
So there's that's a corridor there that they have identified, the professor and his team. They've identified this corridor between Chachapoyas, Moyobamba, and Gran Pahaten. And they have found some very interesting ruins in that corridor, including 2 gigantic stone tombs.
Really?
And when he told me that, the professor
Is this easy to get to?
No.
You're hiking through the jungle?
Yeah, this is uncharted jungle.
With your lucky machete?
Yes.
Machete?
So, yeah, that where it says Lost City there, where it says Lost City, that is uncharted jungle.
So how do they get in there?
You'd have to just bushwhack your way into there. Now they haven't been. That's just a reference. I don't know that point. I just put that on there on the map because they found these 2 tombs. They found some very interesting ruins. They found this system of roads, including the one I was on in Kapuli. They know that Gran Pahaten is located to the south. They know Chachapoyas. These are 3 ancient Peruvian cities: Chachapoyas, Moyobamba, and Gran Pahaten. And because of the network of roads, because of the tombs, and because of the ruins, they know that there's a lost city somewhere in the middle. There has to be. There has to be another city in the middle.
Giant tombs or like.
So when he said that the tombs were gigantic stone tombs, I looked at him and I said, well, that's interesting because the Chachapoyas have legends of giants, red-haired giants. And when I said that, he went like this. He just stared at me for a second. And he just sort of you could tell, wait a minute. How do you know that?
Are these like the giant stone tombs in Sardinia? Like those ones?
I don't know. I don't know what shape they have, but he definitely, his whole countenance changed when I said that. And he just gave me this look like, I will neither confirm nor deny.
Yeah.
So I know that's, the wheels are turning in his head because he knows who the Chachapoyas are.
How did the story of the Lost City of Z originate?
So now let's talk about the Lost City of Z. So
Percy Fawcett.
So we think that there's a lost city in there. By the way, this Professor Soto, Abraham Soto, he has invited me to partner with him and his team. He wants me to partner with him and his team. And I'm going to try and find this lost city. So why this lost city is so intriguing to me is because I believe that this definitely was habitation of the Chachapoyas people, okay? That whole area was habitation of the Chachapoyas people, for sure. Now, the Inca did conquer the Chachapoyas. They were the most indomitable tribe the Inca ever came up against, ever contended with. The Chachapoyas, they were called the Cloud Warriors, the warriors of the Cloud Forest. And when the Spaniards arrived in the 1530s, they encountered the Chachapoyas and they made a treaty with them. They they signed a pact with them. The Chachapoyas joined the Spaniards against the Inca.
I think we talked about a little bit of this on our Angels.
But but the point is, it was back then when the Spaniards first encountered the Chachapoyas that they noted that these anatomical anomalies among the Chachapoyas people. Now, they were taller on average than the other natives. Now, they weren't like 6 foot tall. They were just taller than the other natives, or like 5'8" or something like that. Because the other natives they were like a foot taller than the other natives. Okay, that's interesting. They have fair skin. Some of them look like Europeans. Blue and green eyes, red, blonde hair. So obviously there's something in the gene pool here that's different before the Spaniards arrived. Before. Okay? So again, you talk to the Chachapoyas people, they're going to say some of them will say they're descended from the red-haired giants of the cloud forest. So now let's talk about the Lost City of Z. So some of you are probably familiar with that, right? The Lost City of Z. That was a
movie, right?
A movie was made about it 15 years ago.
I've read the book. Yeah, there's a book on it.
The book is actually called Lost Cities, Lost Trails. Percy Fawcett.
Yep.
Percy Fawcett was a early 20th century explorer. He was English, and he had this obsession. He believed that there was this mysterious lost city somewhere in the Andean Amazon, or somewhere in the Amazon, but not that far from the Andes. So he was looking in the southern part of the Andean Amazon, namely Bolivia. He was down in Bolivia. And there's a long story there to Percy Fawcett. That guy's like your quintessential 19th century, or rather early 20th century explorer, right? So he's looking for this lost city, which he designates Z because it doesn't have a name. What a lot of people don't know, actually the movie gets part of this correct, is that Percy Fawcett was told that the lost city he was looking for, the city of Z, was a city built by giants. Does anyone know who told him that?
No.
One Madame Helena Blavatsky.
Interesting. Really interesting.
Told him that the lost city of Z was a city built by giants. So Percy Fawcett was looking for a city of giants. I think he was looking in the wrong place. I think that the city of giants, there is a city built by giants, and it's right there, or thereabouts.
His story is tragic. I mean, him and his son disappeared in 1925 into the jungle and never returned.
He disappeared, and Fawcett went looking for him, probably went mad because he lost his son on that expedition. And he never found the lost city that he was looking for. He was way deep in the Amazon, but he started up higher in the Andes. And he didn't know exactly where it was. I heard, and I could not find verification of this, but I heard that initially he was interested in the Chachapoyas area. But I could never find verification for that. I was contacted probably, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, 7 years ago, by a production company. And this production company wanted to follow in the footsteps of Percy Fawcett and wanted to see if they could, find clues to his death. And they wanted me to lead the expedition 7-8 years ago. And they wanted to begin the expedition in Chachapoyas. And I said, why do you want to begin the expedition in Chachapoyas? And they said, because he was looking for a lost city. I said, yeah, but he was looking for a lost city down near Bolivia, down in that area of the Amazon. They said, yeah. And I said, he was looking for a lost city of giants. And they said, yeah, that's why we wanted to start in Chachapoyas. And that's why they called me. Because I'm the guy that goes looking for giants. But they didn't come right out and tell me that.
Yeah.
So I do believe that there is a lost city of giants. And when we say a lost city of giants, we're talking about a megalithic city. So I think that in that quarter that was identified by Soto and his team, there's a megalithic city. And it has something to do.
Is it all grown over?
Huh?
Is it all consumed by the vegetation?
That is intense jungle, and that's high jungle. All of that is Andean Amazon. You can kind of see to the right. You can see where the Amazon basin where it levels out, and it's sea level Amazon. But when you get up into the high jungle, it's the terrain is even more difficult to negotiate because now you have mountains and it's not flat. It's difficult in the jungle, in the low jungle. Actually, I prefer exploring in the high jungle because there's less malaria for one thing, but there's less pests in general in the high jungle because it's cooler. So I do believe that the lost city of Z is in that corridor. I'm persuaded. I did just because of the anecdotal evidence, because also those two large tombs, they've identified them. They're very mysterious, he told me. They're very large. They're unusual. Most likely Chachapoyas. And they can't open them because they've identified them, but the owners of the property are hostile, he told me. So in Peru, if you're a farmer and you discover ruins on your property, you don't want to tell anybody. Because if you do, the Ministry of Culture encroaches. The Ministry of Culture is aggressive. Farmers don't like them. And the Ministry of Culture will accuse them of grave robbing and search their homes for artifacts. And the farmers they don't have time for that. So they don't tell anybody about the ruins. Sometimes they'll destroy whatever they have so that the Ministry of Culture never comes looking or never discovers anything on their property. And they keep people out aggressively, especially if there's something interesting on their property. Mm-hmm. They keep people out because they don't want the Ministry of Culture to encroach. Causes them all kind of problems. So both of the tombs are on private property. But the professor has told me that they have a plan to persuade the owners to give them access to the tombs.
But there's a price.
There's something. Yeah. So certainly enough money would do it.
Did he tell you where the tombs are?
No, he would, but I didn't ask him exactly where they are. He said they're in the corridor. And they haven't explored that whole corridor, by the way.
What's the mileage between these?
I don't know. To drive from Moyobamba to Chachapoyas, to drive on the highway, it's probably 6 hours.
Okay. So it's a pretty big...
Grand Pahatén, you can't get near Grand Pahatén. That's, like I said, it's shut down. Okay, now let's talk about why.
Yeah.
When I was living in Peru years ago, I heard rumors that the bodies of giants were discovered in Chachapoyas. Red-haired giants, 9 foot tall. And to this day, if you go to Chachapoyas, you'll hear these stories. Very much like here in the United States, bodies of giants discovered. Somebody comes from the university, or from, in this case, in our case, the Smithsonian, takes the giants, the remains, secrets them away to some repository. Well, when I was living in Peru some years ago, my friend Benny Humphreys he had an acquaintance. Benny lives in Tarapoto. Tarapoto's north. It's off the map. It's north of Moyobamba. And an acquaintance of his, somehow he got into contact with this individual through an acquaintance who heard that Benny and I, were interested in the giants of Chachapoyas. And in fact, let me amend this story. I wasn't living in Peru at the time. I was actually in Peru making a documentary film about giants. Okay, so word got around that I was interested in giants. And Benny talked to his acquaintances, and one of them hooked him up with this individual. This individual was, I believe he was a curator of a museum, or he was an archaeologist, I can't recall. But we talked to him, he contacted us, and he told us a very fascinating story. He told us that 9 foot tall giants had been discovered in Chachapoyas. He had seen them with his own eyes, and he knew where they were being kept in Lima. And we were talking about getting access to them. It was definitive. The bodies existed. This was a matter of fact. They were extracted from Chachapoyas at some time in the past. They were deposited in a museum somewhere in Lima and have never been seen by the public. So I was on the calls with him. Both me and Benny speak fluent Spanish. I was on the calls with this individual. Well, obviously we wanted to talk to him. So we agreed to fly him into Tepe from Lima, from the capital city. We fly him in. I remember waiting for this guy at the airport. His flight was late. We were waiting there. And Benny and I are there. And we can't wait to talk to this guy. Gets off the plane. We watch him walk from the plane into the... We watch him walk from the plane into the airport. We receive him in the airport. And we go to a restaurant. Sit down with him. And I look at him and I say... I think he was a professor, but I can't remember if he was the curator exactly. I said, whatever his name was, I don't remember anymore. I said, tell us about the giants. And he goes, what giants? I said, the giants that you were telling us about on the phone. I mean, there's from Chachapoyas, the 9-foot giants. And he goes, wow, that sounds really interesting, but I don't know anything about that. And me and Benny are like, what in the world is going on? We just talked to this guy. And we're looking at each other. We're like, we are literally looking at each other. What is happening? And we're trying to figure out what's going on. We were just talking to you on the phone about these giants, these 9-foot giants that you said you've seen them. They're in a museum somewhere in Lima. You were going to come tell us about us and then take us to see them. And he's like, oh, that sounds really fascinating. It's like, do you want to find giants? I was like, yes. It's like, well, I'll help you. We can go out and see if we can find some. And I'm like, he was playing stupid. He was playing dumb.
Yeah.
It was the most bizarre thing.
Yeah.
So, and me and Benny were just looking at each other. We just couldn't believe that this guy was pretending like he didn't know what we were talking about. We flew him from Lima to Tepe. There was no exchange of money, nothing like that. We did pay for his ticket, and now he's pretending like we have no idea what we're talking about. The only thing that we could conclude is that somebody's talked to him, told him not to talk to us. Somebody got to him and told him not to talk to those two gringos. What else? We could draw no other conclusion. I was just in Peru again on this trip with Benny, and we were reminiscing about this, how bizarre it was. What other explanation is there? It was so explicit talking to this guy, texting back and forth on WhatsApp, whatever, talking to him on the phone, on conference calls. It was very clear. He knew about the bodies, like 3 of them, of 9-foot giants that came out of Chachapoyas and were secreted away to a museum in Lima. And now he knows nothing.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I have no doubt, none, especially since I've uncovered so many historical records of giants in Peru, no doubt that there were giants in Chachapoyas. And probably still buried. Some are still buried there. I have historical records. We have the genetic anomalies of the Chachapoyas people. And I had my own experience on the other side of Chachapoyas, on the other side of that cloud forest, where all the villagers in Okayi told me that there were giants in that forest and that they would put their cows up in the trees.
Like still giants.
Yeah, living giants. Red-haired, 6-fingered giants. So I don't know if I ever told you guys that story that...
It's like the stories of Solomon Island.
The Okayi story. Did I ever tell you that?
No.
I alluded to it earlier. Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure
Okay,
not.
so I guess I should tell you that story. How much time do we have left? When I was up in Okayi, if I told you this story before, you'll hear it again. So when I was up in Okayi, I gotta try and cut this short because it's a long story. I was 19 years old. I was with my friend Mike Miller, and we were a gringo freak show. We were traveling around the mountains, just sort of aimlessly, Mike and I. I had dreadlocks, Mike had dreadlocks. His dreadlocks, he had blonde hair. His dreadlocks were wrapped in white string covered in wax. And he's already blonde, right? Blue eyes, really fair skin. I've got my dreadlocks, and I got a monkey on my shoulder. And I'm wearing a cloak. So we were quite literally the gringo circus everywhere we went. I mean, we walked into villages where we were the first gringos. We were the first gringos ever to walk into these villages, and the whole village would just come and stand around us and stare at us.
You ruined it for them. They're like, "This is what gringos are."
No. We gave them the wrong impression. We're much less exciting than that. So we were traveling around this part of Peru, up there on the other side of Chachapoyas. We were just thumbing our way through the mountains. We didn't really have any money. And wherever the trucks were headed or wherever the vehicles were headed, that's where we were going. So we jumped on the back of this one truck one morning, and it had like coffee in the back of it. And they took us to this town called Ocaí. That was where it was going, so that's where we were going. And Ocaí is... I know that if I did this, the people listening to this show wouldn't know, but I want to go point to where it is on the map. But it's up there on the other side of the cloud forest from Chachapoyas. And this is not a place gringos go, okay? Let alone gringos that look like us. So we get up to Ocaí, and it's probably 9,000 feet, the elevation, somewhere around there. It's all coffee growing. Maybe it's 7,000, something like that. But it's all coffee growers. And Ocaí, it's not a big town. And after Ocaí, you can keep going like south on the road, but you can't go east anymore. Because east of Ocaí is that vast cloud forest till you get to Chachapoyas. And there's nothing there's no roads. And the cloud forest in Peru is very mysterious. It's freaky. It really is. So we ended up staying in a church. We ran into a priest. His church had Catholic church. Under the sanctuary was a priestly quarters, bunk beds. And he let us stay there, me, Mike, and the monkey. That's a good title for a book, isn't it?
It sounds like a band, too.
So,
a jam band. Yeah.
So we were staying in the priestly quarters, and every night, every evening, the priest would have me and Mike come and dine with him, sup with him in the evening, him and the nuns and the other priests. And he would tell us stories about the region. I ended up on a path going to these Indian ruins out there near on the outskirts of Ocaí. We're trying to get up to these Indian ruins. Mike, he had shoes on. He didn't have a monkey on his shoulder. He was able to hike up to the ruins quicker than me, so he advanced ahead, and I was supposed to meet him there. I was hiking in janques, which are the traditional Peruvian sandals, and it was very difficult to make any headway because it was wet, and those are not good footwear to hike in. So I eventually took them off and was going barefoot. Didn't make it. Got dark. I had to pitch my tent, hammock tent, on the path. Mike's up there at the ruins. I imagine I'm on the path. And these ruins are supposed to be cursed, by the way. And there's a story associated with those ruins. And I should say, before I conclude this story, that one of the stories that the priest told me was that the villagers were complaining about their cows being found up in the trees. And he told me it happens. It absolutely happens. I talked to the villagers in Ocaí, and they said, yeah.
Are they alive or dead?
Alive, up in the tree. They've had to get there. Then nobody knows. It's a big mystery. We don't understand how a cow gets up in a tree. And they have to get ropes, and sometimes the cows fall and die. And it was a reality. Now, I don't think it was happening every other day, but it had happened and was a phenomenon that was continuing to happen. And the priest told me that that there's legends of giants in the cloud forest, and they think that that's possibly the explanation. So I'm on this path. I set my tent up across the path. It's kind of on an inclination, not a good place to put a tent either. But it was getting dark. I had no choice. And I'm standing there before I get into my tent. I tell this whole story, by the way, in some episode on your show, but also on my YouTube channel. And I'm standing there contemplating how crappy this night's going to be because it gets cold in the cloud forest. We were supposed to have a fire and a nice camp set up at the ruins. And my monkey's on my shoulder. And I'm standing there right before it gets dark, getting ready to go in this hammock tent. And all of a sudden, I hear something moving in the forest. And it's like something's like moving around. It's breaking branches, something large. And I thought it was a bear because there's Andean bears out there. And I'm thinking, oh, there must be a bear walking around. And I'm looking into the forest, and I can't see anything because it's too dark now. And all of a sudden, whatever this was walking out there bellowed my name. Tim! Clear as day. Like, it was loud, rumbling. My monkey freaked out. He grabbed my throat like he was shivering. He was freaked out. He dug his hands into my neck, and I remember I had to pry him off of me. He heard the voice and
he knew what it was.
He knew there's something frightening in the woods, and I'm just standing there. I mean, I clearly heard my name. It was bellowed, and I don't know what it was, but I guess there's a possibility it was a red-haired giant. but whatever that was, it happened in that area, in that general region of Chachapoyas, in that cloud forest. That's why Chachapoyas to me is so interesting. Yeah. I do think that there's living giants in that region still today because that cloud forest is intense. It's intense. There's not been a lot of exploration in the cloud forest. So there's a lot of untracked wilderness.
You think we're catching up to it, like LiDAR and other systems that can just scan?
Well, that's what I want to do when I go back, because I want to hire a LiDAR team. And we didn't even talk about. Do we got like 5 minutes left?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to ask the same thing. What happens now?
So that was all digressions. After I talked to Abraham Soto.
That's just the warm-up. That's the intro.
After I talked to Professor Soto, remember, he's the one who took the picture in front of that megalithic wall.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He was gracious enough to set me up with somebody who could take me to the wall, with a farmer who lived in the vicinity. So the next morning, we headed out. And long story short, we made it to the wall. We had to hike up a ravine in the river. This was definitely off the beaten path and in the jungle. We make it to the wall, and I was greatly impressed because I'm certain that this is a megalithic cyclopean retainer wall. I say retainer wall because this wall, and I don't know if you guys can find it to put it up on the picture of me standing in front of it. This wall is, you have to understand, this wall is located along the river in the ravine. That's Sage Wall there. The wall is located along the river, and the river, that's Sage Wall, so let's go maybe back. There it is. Okay, so first of all, I know you guys are going to see these pipes running through. Everybody wonders what those are. Pipes, because further up the river, around the bend, somebody has installed a little dam. So that's for irrigation. Those pipes are for irrigation. The locals are directing water around that wall to irrigate their crops. So the locals have, as is always the case, the locals have known about this location, but they never thought anything about it. When Professor Soto went there, he thought, this is a wall. When I went there, I thought, this is a megalithic cyclopean wall. It's the same architectural style as the foundations of Machu Picchu. Mm-hmm. It's polygonal. The stones are fitted together precisely. And I verified. I went up on the side of the wall, and with my machete, I dug out the side of the wall. I verified that those stones go all the way through. They're individual blocks. That's not fracturing in the face of the wall. And see, it's a ravine, and I'm standing in the river, or next to the river. And you can't see it. You can see it later on in the video. On my right hand, there's a channel. And there it is. There's a channel carved into the bedrock right in front of the wall. So it appears to me that someone built a retainer wall, a megalithic retainer wall, to protect this part of the river, keep that channel open. They are blocks, okay? So it's not just fissuring on the exterior of the wall like sage wall. These are blocks. Okay. I've never seen anything like that in the jungle. This is the first megalith I've ever seen in the jungle. If you add these components together, the potential megalithic quarry of Kapoli, jury's out on that.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's a megalithic quarry, you have a very important road, probably Chachapoyas. Okay? You have a very important road running through this area. You have what I believe is a aqueduct, man-made aqueduct, cascade. That would have been a tremendous enterprise to build that thing. Okay? Then you have this corridor that's been identified by Soto and his team, in which there are 2 gigantic tombs. We don't know what's in them, but they're there. And now you have this cyclopean megalithic wall.
And how close is this wall to where you think the city may be? Where's this wall again?
It's in the corridor. It's up. See Moyobamba up there in the northeastern part of that area. It's in that region. Okay, but remember, all the way south is Gran Fajaten. That was Chachapoyas. Up in Chachapoyas, that was the main settlement of the Chachapoyas people. So this entire area was inhabited by the Chachapoyas. This entire area. Yeah. And the Inca later built some stuff there. They had an occupation for a while till the Spaniards came. So I think, to put a cap on this whole thing, I am personally persuaded that there is a lost city in that corridor. Soto and his team are persuaded that there is a lost city in that corridor. And furthermore, I suspect it's the lost city of giants and the true location of the lost city of Z. And I think that Madame Blavatsky is right. In this particular occasion, she is correct that the lost city of Z is a city built by giants.
Yeah. So when are you going back? What's the plans? If it's there, I mean, who else is doing this? So it was you and Mike, and you've got the professors there on the ground, and so what happens next? What moving forward? What do we do? What's the next thing?
I'm in conversation with the professor. After my conference, I'm going to start to put an expedition together. I want a LiDAR team. And I want there's a particular archaeologist that I've tapped to help me if I do this expedition. I think you guys know this particular archaeologist, Juan Mondo Gonzalez.
Mondo, baby, yes.
And so I got to put a team together, and I definitely I need LiDAR.
Where's the LiDAR technology now?
It's all over. I mean, there's LiDAR teams in Lima now.
I mean, is it like getting to the point where...
Oh, you mean technologically speaking? Yeah, I mean, LiDAR, you can LiDAR large areas of the jungle relatively quickly. So
is it on a drone?
From a drone, you do it off... you can do it from an airplane too, but there's no reason to anymore. You go out with a drone, and then you can do it by quadrants and really cover a lot of ground. So...
Does it spit you out like pretty good photographs, or how does it?
It removes the vegetation. LiDAR basically removes the vegetation, and you can see if there's any artificial structures. So if there's ruins, you can see them on LiDAR. And we've used LiDAR before, and it's really remarkable. I mean, that's what you need in this kind of a forested environment. You need LiDAR. Ground penetrating radar, you bring that in after you find the structures. But LiDAR is what you need. So...
Your team need any just gringos with limited skills, and maybe the 2022 Peruvian rock throwing champion, perhaps. Let us know.
Yeah, you have to come to Peru to see.
A couple guys.
So it's
people are like, what?
It's in the works. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know when.
Yeah.
When it's going to happen. But
we're doing another trip at some point. I know that. We gotta.
Yeah, there's a whole other situation unfolding in Peru too that we don't have time to talk about. That is even more interesting.
So I mean, we've been there obviously with you, and you got three-fingered alien mummy-looking things. You've got megaliths, and I brought this up earlier, but like these, like when you go to Machu Picchu, for example, it's like taking a train in, going up the side of the mountain. It doesn't make any sense why they build these things where they build them. And we hiked up the back.
Nate almost died. He hiked Huayna Picchu in jeans and Jordans.
That was fun.
I left him behind. I thought this is a one-man show now. He's not going to make it.
That was probably the most deadly hike we've ever done. Like, why hiking up Huayna Picchu? If you slipped once, you were gone.
Yeah.
You had to sign like a waiver to get in there.
Then we smoked cigars on top, and me and Tim almost got kicked out of.
But we got
the entire structure.
Stories of cloud giants who've got.
That's right.
The hovering.
Oh, you got the face peelers. You've got and then you've got the Shinkana that's about to be opened.
I mean, it sounds like you've got.
What, really?
Yes.
Who's gonna open it?
Anselm P. Rambla.
Let's go. I got it. Yeah, that.
And I'm.
This is a whole nother thing. I mean, but yes, the Chincana. We were in Peru briefly. There's a tunnel that's supposed to connect a lot of these megalithic sites and the ancient temples.
Well, specifically the one that runs beneath Boticancha and Sacsayhuaman.
Yeah.
And that tunnel, we found it with our technology. Anselm saw it with his own eyes years before. And it's a long story, but it's a legend. If you ask historians today about the Shinkana, that's just a legend. It doesn't exist. It exists. We found it with our GPR unit. And Anselm found it too. And I just announced to the world on the Sean Ryan show that this happened, by the way. But Anselm, long story short, Anselm now has permission to excavate.
Okay.
To get into the tunnel. Because we went with our GPR unit, and based on Anselm's story, we were able to detect the tunnel. We saw it.
We were in Peru for everybody watching and listening here. We walked that line. And we went when we were there, we went and walked to where the entrance and then to along where this tunnel is supposed to run.
That's right. Yeah, we saw the tunnel on the GPR scan, and then Anselm, with the same technology, went back shortly after us, and he reaffirmed the reading, and he even got a better reading. And he published his results in Barcelona last year. And right after that, 2 archaeologists in Lima stole his data and claimed they found the tunnels. And that was in international headlines last year. I don't know if maybe some of you guys saw that. Legendary tunnels discovered under the city of Cusco. I mean, these are headlines. And I was like, I knew somebody stole Anselm's material, but I didn't know. I found out in Peru, I was with his son in Lima, I found out while I was in Peru that Anselm actually has been working on a project behind the scenes, working with the archaeological community in Cusco and getting all the documentation in place. He now has a contract signed by all of the necessary archaeologists in Cusco for a 3-year project to get into the Shinkana. They're waiting on one more signature. The Ministry of Culture is changing out in Peru, and when the new one comes in, he signs the final document, and then they can break ground and dig. And they can dig in the Cosicancha, which is right in front of Boticancha. And that will be the biggest archaeological discovery since Machu Picchu.
And you think that tunnel goes all the way? I mean, we were there all the way to Sacsayhuaman.
It goes to the galleries beneath Sacsayhuaman.
Which, I mean, we went to, and that is the most impressive thing I've ever seen. Like, the size of those stones fit together, like
the most impressive megalithic wall on Earth, Sacsayhuaman.
So Peru is just chock full of it. I mean, their last couple stories sound like some sort of, cattle mutilation.
The face peeler stuff. Yeah.
And so you have all these phenomena, like we talk about on the show, the various ones that you can find around the world, but Peru has all of it. All of them.
Duendes,
the little people are there.
The little people.
So it draws Nate back again.
Yeah, I talked to those guys. We came off Ollanta Tambo down the hill, and I was talking to the locals in the shops about little people.
Shocker.
Well, because he's selling the little
We should have bought some of those.
Yeah,
Those would have made good
I don't
props
know.
here.
I don't want to bring back that.
Choo-choo.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff happening here. But
now this is
we're excited, Tim, because obviously we got to go back to Peru at some point with some new people, new listeners, and check out some of these things. And I want to get over to Easter Island because I think there's a connection between this part of the world and there.
The same megalith builders from Peru built the stuff in Easter Island.
Yeah. It's just like maybe there was some sort of ancient path, or I don't know. It's interesting, like, to have all these topics, but Peru is definitely like almost the blurriest location there is.
And I love this too because I feel like we're on the cusp. Like it feels like you're right on the cusp of these major discoveries, whether it be the Lost City or the.
But nobody wants that stuff to come out.
I don't think it's coincidental that I ended up in Peru.
Yeah.
When I was 19 years old, I think you guys will recall that I wasn't headed to Peru.
No,
yeah,
you were headed elsewhere to Europe.
I was headed to Scotland and Ireland.
And they said, nope.
And I literally got deported. The next day I arrived, I got deported back to the States. And it was during that window, that period of time, the next week, when I was home, really bummed out because felt like I couldn't escape the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah.
When it just so happened that I was supposed to be in Ireland and Scotland, got deported. It just so happened that Alfonso Felix, a Mexican-American missionary to Peru, was preaching in my dad's church that next week. And the door to Scotland and Ireland was slammed in my face, and the door to Peru opened.
Wide open.
I never told anybody. Well, I never told this publicly, but I hesitate to do it. But when I was, this is probably not a good way to end this conversation.
Perfect.
When I was 14 years old, my mom was dying of cancer, and she was on hospice, and she was in the living room on the hospital bed, and. You know, it had been a slow thing. It wasn't suddenly. This unfolded over a year. The progression of the cancer. So it wasn't like everybody had a long time to prepare for the reality that she was going to die. And my dad was telling me and my brother, "You need to go say goodbye to your mom." And I remember my dad and my older brother were in the kitchen, and me and my twin brother. And I'm, 14 years old, maybe 13 at the time, probably 14. And my dad's saying, you need to go do it now, right now. And I'm like, how do you just go say goodbye to your mom? I'm like sitting there like, I didn't want to do it. It was very awkward, and I didn't, how do you do that? So, but he made me. So I went over and I sat down next to my mom. Actually, now that I recall, she wasn't in the bed yet. She was laying on the couch. And I sat down on the couch next to my mom, and I didn't know what to say. I mean, what do you say? I didn't know what to say. So you know what I said? Mom, I'm going to go to Peru. I had no desire to go to Peru.
Yeah.
I don't even know why I said it. I swear, I didn't know. It came out of my mouth, and I said, what? Why did I just say that?
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Peru. And then I said, I'm going to be a missionary in Peru, which I did some of that. But I said, I'm going to go to Peru. And after I said that to her, I walked away and I thought, why did I tell my mom I'm going to Peru? I had no desire to go to Peru. I had no plans to go to Peru. I wanted to go to Africa, Ireland, and Scotland when I was young. None. Zero desire to go to Peru. It wasn't even on my radar. But yet this is what came out of me.
It's crazy.
When I had to say goodbye to my mom. Isn't that weird?
That's
That's kind of a morbid thing to end on there. But it's true. That happened. And so it's very interesting.
And then you did.
Yeah.
Very interesting that I'm now,
interesting.
involved in this weird stuff in Peru. So.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for taking us there and helping us kind of take our show from stories about creatures to dynasties, empires, and the weirdest locations that we can. I think it's really great because I think the data is there. That you have elongated skulls, you've got three-fingered mummies, you've got stuff that we've seen in Cusco and Sacsayhuaman that's just like it's not human. It's beyond like our understanding, and all these things in one place. And I think it's a ton of data for the skeptics, the people that don't want to think about this narrative giants, either in the Bible or in specifically on our show a lot. It just feels like it's conspiracy theory, but there's so many things there, and I think it helps us move the meter and making this more mainstream, and people can kind of accept, the strange parts of the Bible are Probably not that strange, actually, after all.
Yeah.
And give it up for Tim, everybody.
Yeah.
Coming in.
Well, thank you guys for having me. And if I can,
Yeah.
I forgot. I have a conference in Bozeman, Montana, taking place from the 27th to the 28th of June. And we're going to have David Paulides, Joe Allen, talking about transhumanism.
Yeah.
Congressman Eric Burleson is coming. We're going to be talking about the UAP stuff. My friend Gary Haven, we're going to be talking about our adventures in Peru and some of the stuff we discovered. So if anybody wants to go to that conference, you can go to elberinoevents.com. Get tickets, 27th through 28th of June. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome.
And then, yeah, we love you, Tim. Thanks for
Thank you guys
being
for having me on again. It's always fun being with you guys. And I've been very excited watching your show explode. Everywhere I go, people come up to me and say, I saw you on Blurry Creatures.
Well,
or they'll say to me, I know who you are. I'll say, Blurry Creatures, right?
And that's all going to change. I mean, so we're very likewise, very, very excited to see all things you're doing. I mean, did Sean Ryan this week, guys. He was on Sean Ryan. Michael Knowles for a second time. Like, it's really, really cool to have a friend and see your trajectory and people getting a hold of your work. Because, I mean, I think the way that you, as Nate said, the way you analyze things, the way you write down, the way you articulate, and the way you weave the gospel and the Bible into understanding some of these things that are hard to understand, I think is something that people are really waking up to, that message. And I think it's such an important message. And so cool to see you be platformed on these major platforms and get your message out. And I mean, we love you. And we couldn't be more proud of you and proud to be your friend, man.
Well, likewise, gentlemen.
Special.
Likewise.
Yeah.
And I think it's important because you have some of these questions, you need 20 years, 25 years, 30 years of research to make sense of what's coming out now. I think a lot of people are running with a lot of bad theories because they just don't have enough information.
Yeah.
And I think you're saying I'm going to go to Peru as a young man is an important part of shaping the conclusions that people have based on the evidence that's coming out. You know,
I'm just riding the wave.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah. All right.
A few questions, or we have time for a couple questions.
We have time.
Dan, do we got time for a few questions?
Yeah. We got them.
If I got about 10 minutes, if you guys have any questions, there's a mic up front. If you want to come, just like class, raise your hand and come to the front of the class. Ask Nate personal questions, honestly. Please just do that.
I don't think that mic's on. Hold on.
Ben's coming.
Thank you for this prestigious award.
You're welcome. And the TV guide is Tim themed there.
I wrote this question down near the beginning. It occurred to me when you were talking about the mummies, the small ones, being constructed in a way that didn't seem like they were put together right. I was wondering, do you think, but at the same time, they have these implants where organic material was growing around them. Mm-hmm. Do you think they could have been some kind of the way that idols were constructed to basically be filled with another consciousness, but instead of being made out of inorganic material?
Yeah,
and then
that's a good question.
Because it's like, if it's communication technology, some kind of mind connection to it.
I suppose that's possible. That's a good question.
Like an ancient Chucky doll?
Yes,
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Chucky doll. That's what they
are.
That
was terrifying. Agreed, yeah. That's a good one.
Very good
I
question.
Like that.
Yeah. Show them the TV guide, Tim.
The most attractive men.
What year is this from?
1985 or whatever.
1985. I was 2 years old.
Beautiful.
That's not the part of the TV
That's
guide
not what it
that
says.
we're interested in.
April 19th. No, what?
I was 3 years old. No. We got Tim.
It has to be related to this TV guide. That's what we're talking about now.
Yeah. The most attractive men of 1982.
Oh, man. Kirk Cameron on there?
No, I saw him the other day.
So my question doesn't have anything to do with what we talked about today. Sure. It was something you'd said. Is that okay?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay. So you're talking about, when the watchers came down, that kind of thing, and made it, with women, human women. Okay, and I remember you saying that they had to have lusted first. Mm-hmm. So why would the watchers and male, the angels or the watchers have male parts to reproduce when they were wherever they were before?
Well, I think the essential question is how in the world could a heavenly being lust in the first place?
Right, and I think you said because they had to have had the parts.
Well, how else?
We've got a wiener question, number 2.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, why did they have the wiener parts?
This goes right in line with the TV guide.
The wiener parts in the first place.
This is on brand. This is so on brand.
Top 10 most attractive watchers on TV.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, why did they have wiener parts in the beginning?
Look what you did.
She's an archeologist.
We actually paid her to ask you this question. Tim, what do you think about angel wieners? That's what we
That's the question that I'm hearing.
God.
So,
such a highbrow conversation we had.
Well, I mean, I just work backwards from that. If you
got to take a dip of that. Talk about this.
You cannot possibly
45-year-old
lust
gum.
if you don't have. Lust is a sexual impulse. Good. Sexual impulses are derived in beings who have sexual organs. So I think if you just deconstruct the story, the only rational conclusion that you can draw is that the Watchers were very much like human males. Because not only did they have the sexual impulse, then they descended and they copulated with human women, and they were able to procreate, which means that they not only did they have the equipment to do so they could lust, then they used the equipment, and it resulted in a hybrid.
Right, but take it back, step back, like before all that.
Why they have them in heaven?
Why'd they have them in heaven?
Well,
that's what I'm
why
asking.
not?
Well, what did they do with it?
Well, I think that...
You know, like, we don't know if there was female angels.
I feel like this is a really good question for Luke. Luke, what do the angels do with their private parts in heaven?
Do you see what I'm saying?
Seems pretty obvious.
Like, we never hear about females up there.
That's the crazy.
So that's what you're getting to is,
Yeah.
did they have females? Do they have females? I think.
But
the answer is probably yes.
Really? Because I think they think Eve was just so unique, you know, like
species unique.
The woman.
Yeah.
I think we've always thought that she was like a new creation, that they had never seen a woman, right? Like,
biblically speaking, there is no indication that there is no information. Let's put it this way about female angels. This does not preclude the possibility that there are female heavenly beings. They're just never mentioned. Okay, so, and Joel Muddamalle would say this is an argument from silence, but nevertheless, I don't think we can totally discount the idea, first and foremost. So I'm not sure even what I think about that. Were there female angels? Are there female heavenly beings? I don't know, precisely because the Bible doesn't tell us one way or the other. But you can't totally discount it. So that's a possibility. That scenario is in play. Okay, maybe they had them and they lost them somehow. I don't know. But what's clear, where we can start from, the starting position for this question is that they lusted. And there's no way to get around that.
right, and I agree with that part.
You cannot get around this. This is the first cause of the Watcher's transgression.
I just wanted to know what they did with it before.
Right.
I think like
maybe
the second thought of that is, I think sometimes people, I don't know, they think that angels just materialize into something. If you materialize into something, you would take on the full genetic makeup of whatever you materialized into. The difference is you have two different DNA coming together that are enough alike to create these abominations and these offspring. That's, I think, why we started proving the giants were a thing, and then work up to the Genesis 6 event, that they had an origin story. They had parents, you know what I'm saying? So obviously they have a DNA of some type, but it's not quite ours, but it's close enough. So they're producing, you know.
Yeah, but what are they doing up there with that equipment?
Yeah, I mean, they obviously had
that's the
sperm,
question.
right?
Yeah.
Some
kind
what
of,
for?
Now we're getting into it.
Before they came down.
I mean, I think the most logical answer, the most logical conclusion is that they have females.
There's a kingdom somewhere else.
Well, we talked a bit about like the idea of the female deities and goddesses that exist, and there's a whole thing that like
That's a good point. Yeah.
Did they masquerade? Like so, there's this whole thought that like it was just these male demons or angels masquerading as female or being transgender in the Babylonian and Sumerian things, but maybe they just weren't. Maybe there were female entities.
It is. It's a distinct possibility.
Maybe it's hard to get a date in heaven. It's just harder, to work a little harder to get a date up there. I think. Though,
I love this question. I'm glad we went here.
I think there is some conversation. Maybe it's like easier for them to come down here and impress human women. It'd be a lot easier, right? If you're
what is it? The Earth Women Are Easy, that movie or whatever.
Well, they always watch that one. They always wanted what Baby Brother had, right?
Yeah.
Elders 100%. Always.
Yeah.
They knew that result of their marriage to human women would be offspring.
Yeah.
So that they knew they had the equipment and they knew what it would do.
I was just curious about the equipment before.
Any more questions like this, and I'm gonna have to check.
Yeah, I love it. I do.
There's a T-shirt there getting ready to be designed.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. This will go on Blurry After Dark.
I'm glad Sean Ryan didn't ask me that question.
You're right. You're like, listen, bro. You got time for one more? Anybody else?
I think that
is a great question.
Should
we rehash that?
But I think
one
that's
out?
why they came up with a whole different theory of the sons of Seth, because ancient people probably thought about these things and said that's just too bizarre to put in the Bible. So it's just
too scandalous.
Yeah.
All right, last question.
Here we go.
A lot of pressure. It's gotta be.
This may be a bad question.
That's even better.
Of all y'all's podcasts, I've noticed that Ali Sayyidatin seems to have the most parallels with Tim stuff. I was wondering if Tim has ever listened to any of his.
I met him.
You met him
at your guys' conference last year. Yeah, good guy. Really good dude. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was any chance of you and him maybe having a live go. Just the
cage match.
The ideas about things being more physical.
Tag team.
Yeah, he's on that spectrum. Yeah.
I'm not okay. So I'm not really 100% familiar. I'm familiar with somewhat with his UFO encounter in Iran.
He has a wild in a UFO encounter.
Yeah, which I find fascinating. But I'm not really sure about his theological position.
Like you talking about more things having more physical location, like in the universe. He seems to be, of all the people I've heard on y'all's podcast, more pushing that direction too, with like there just being deception over time of them trying to convince us that it's a spiritual thing that just isn't a.
I like
Gnostic.
this guy. This is a good point. I would say that this point is what differentiates me is a better word. What differentiates me from a lot of my colleagues is that a lot of my colleagues are still, they're stuck in I'm going to use this term very intentionally actually, a supernatural worldview. And that includes the late Mike Heiser. He was, in my opinion, I had a lot of respect for Mike. Gleaned a lot from his work. But Mike was, in my opinion, he was stuck in a supernatural worldview. In other words, he believed that all of the heavenly beings were spiritual, disembodied specifically. And yet everything they're doing in the biblical narrative is embodied and has a rational explanation. So I certainly that's definitely a distinguishing factor. I don't jump to that conclusion because I don't have any use for those words. And I don't think we use the word spiritual correctly anyway. I think in the West, we've interpreted spiritual as disembodied, when that's not what the word means in the context of when it's being used in the scriptures. Spiritual means, depending on the context, I mean, you can be spiritually minded. You should be spiritually minded as opposed to carnally minded, right? Being spiritually minded doesn't mean that you're disembodied. You have some sort of a disembodied person that's inside of you, and you need to allow that person to dominate. It's not something like that at all. What it means is being spiritually minded is contemplating things that have to do with the kingdom of heaven, and sort of like higher order conscious thoughts about God and nature and the kingdom of heaven, as opposed to the carnal thoughts about reproduction and eating and drinking and all of the bodily needs, which is is base.
Question number 2. Yeah.
So I think we have a misunderstanding of the term spiritual. I don't think we're using it appropriately, because the way that most of us use it is disembodied, and I think that's the wrong idea. So a supernatural worldview that necessitates a realm in which the beings are all in a state of disembodiment, I would say, is wildly inaccurate.
Yeah.
And if Ali thinks that as well, then I'm in good company.
Yeah, which is more of a Gnostic view that, and a lot of people argue Gnosticism kind of crept into the church, and I think this is great because it starts off with like the first question we talked about tonight, which is like Sasquatch is just messing with your brain, but he's actually a physical creature, walking around, leaving hair, footprints, all the things that are physical, right? But it appears to us that he's just dissipating and turning into a spirit and floating away, but it might not actually be true. And then, all the way to the narratives we talked about with Tim, with these things crash. They crash their ships into our to our farms, into our people's land, and people find this stuff. And then we dig up the bones, we find the skeletons, we find the megaliths. It's all a physical thing happening. And maybe they just cruise from some other place. It's just like almost like this to here, and it's not much different than that. That's how we can understand it.
The psalmist wrote that the children of Israel ate the bread of heaven, the sustenance of the angels in the wilderness, the grain of heaven, rather, the sustenance of the angels. And what are the Israelites eat in the wilderness? They gathered the grain that fell from heaven. They called it manna. What is it? That's what it means. What is it? They gathered it, they baked it in the bread, and then the psalmist tells us that this is the grain of heaven, the sustenance of the angels. I mean, this is just one example, but everything we see angels doing is what we do. Going back to the other question, I mean, copulating with women, lusting, first of all, then copulating, then procreating. So I see all of these physical things happening, and it baffles me that we extrapolate from this a disembodied supernatural world. It's like, I don't understand. There's just like this disconnect, and I think that the reason why is because this is Western tradition. This is an artifact of Western Christian tradition, to spiritualize everything. Certainly, this was not the case in the ancient Near Eastern tradition, because you can't spiritualize 200 watchers having sex with human women. That's not spiritual. That's physical. And that undergirds their cosmology. That event, sex between angels and human women, undergirds their cosmological view. So we screwed this up in the West, I think. And we think that by making everything disembodied and supernatural and spiritual, we're being more biblically accurate. When I think it's quite the opposite, actually. I think we are unnecessarily complicating the situation. And I'll just, you've all heard Gary Stearman's story. He was on your show. I often go back to that story. Gary believes that the pilots of that walnut-shaped craft that saved his life were angels, right?
Look to your left, and you'll see a U.
Precisely, with a sense of humor. Angels with a sense of humor flying a piece of technological hardware. They didn't just I Dream of Jeannie poof him out of the plane and put him on the tarmac. No, they flew their advanced aerospace vehicle next to his aircraft, and they escorted him to safety. So, to me, my brain. It's a lot. I feel like a lot of Christians. It's easier for their brain to go to the ethereal. That's like a really difficult leap for my brain, because that's like jumping into nothingness. It's like there's nothing you can touch. There's nothing you can identify there. It's a world of of shadows, and there's nothing is defined. There's
shadows and dust,
and so there's no answers there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you deconstruct the things that are actually happening in the narrative, then what you find is a world that's very familiar to us. And why shouldn't we find a world that's very familiar to us?
Yeah.
I mean, we are the younger sibling in the family.
And I would argue that everything we do here, we ripped off. I think that's why we build the way the ancients built the megaliths the way they did, because they knew they were built somewhere else.
Furthermore, if you read the book Cydonia by David Flynn, he talks about the monuments on Mars being originally erected for the glory of God.
Indeed.
And that they were corrupted, and that the monument building on Earth was a reflection of that, but was corrupted and became the tool of the occult, and so forth. So I think that's a good point. You know, monument building, megalith building, technology, the technological armaments, technological vehicles, all of this originated, dare I say, in the kingdom of heaven.
Civilization.
The original civilization.
And
that
there
predates
it is.
all
There it
others.
is. You gotta
and
pull
that
the mic
civilization
off and
has
drop it.
That civilization has a king.
Yeah.
So that's the way I see it.
And I think that makes the most sense, yeah, with all the things we talk about. Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Timothy. To our studio. This is how we, can keep this show going. You guys helped directly make this production happen. So thank you guys so much for coming in. Give it up one more time for Tim Alberino.
Thank you.
And we have, for those listening at home, we have a Book of Enoch together, and you can get that blurryenoch.com.
blurryenoch.com.
Just like that.
And a few more books on the way, huh?
Yeah. Maybe some trips.
Nephilim series. It's happening.
Let's go back to Peru.
I want to go to Sardinia first, but we're not voting right now. We're not taking a vote.
Let's go open a Chicana.
That's what let's do that, actually. Yeah.
That's better.
All right.
Let's go do that.
Thank you, everybody.
The man, the mullet, and the monkey. What was it?
I don't know, but that sounds really good.
Okay, cool.
It was the Mike. Me, Mike, and the monkey.
Me, Mike, and the monkey.
All right, guys. Be safe.
It's me, myself, and Irene, yeah.
And we'll see you in the Blurryverse out there.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.